Hello, everybody, and welcome to Final Fantasy IV Free Enterprise. This is a special race that we have today for our Summer Games Done Quick 2222 submission between Pkey 4787 and Cubs Rule 21. My name is Rex Raoul, and I'm joined in the booth by Xenocat
Hello.
and JMac the Librarian.
How's it going?
It's going great for me, and I am looking forward to this race. But before we get started, Xenocat, just what is this free enterprise that we're looking at today?
Well, you know that wonderful RPG that we all love from 1991 about, the Cecil, the Dark Knight, who has to go on a journey of redemption and a lot of great character development, and it's a whole epic story? Yeah, we threw all that out and turned it into a scavenger hunt.
Yeah, a lot of fun that we're going to have with that today, right?
Yeah, we're going to be hunting for all sorts of things. For this seed, we have to find the Legend Sword and the Adamant to forge, the Pink Tail, the Cave Magnus, the package to burn mist, and we have to trade away the Rat Tail. But we don't quite have to do all of those things that you see down in the bottom part of the screen.
No, absolutely not. Today we are featuring our 4 out of 5 flag, which only makes the runners complete 4 out of 5 of these objectives. So this gives a lot of wiggle room in terms of routing and in terms of making some of those choices as to which objectives to kind of chase this seed. So it'll be very interesting, especially seeing that there are 2 tails. So yeah, this is going to be a really exciting race, and hopefully we'll see a little bit of divergence tonight.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a really fun. These objectives at the bottom basically kind of tell you what things you need to find in order to complete that scavenger hunt. Once that's all done, you'll be rewarded with the crystal, and then you can head over and fight the big bad boss Zeromus. But we're a little bit of ways away from that right now, aren't we?
Yeah, let's stick to the objectives first. Got to complete 4 of those, and then we'll worry about the final boss, because that's a whole other undertaking that our runners will have to deal with.
Yeah, right now our runners are getting prepped. You see, one of the features, you're able to change the names of your characters beforehand. So taking advantage of that, both of our runners, and we're getting ready to start.
Yeah, and it does look like we have a Telestart, which is a very interesting starting character.
Yes, because Tella is what we like to call a utility character. You don't really get to keep him for very long in the original game, but having a randomized character list, he becomes a really good built-in utility character, being able to do those basic white spells and black spells that you need later on in the game. So having him to start out is not necessarily the worst person to start out with.
Yeah, he comes with a number of good early game spells like Blink, which gives characters 2 stacks of physical evasion, and Exit, which lets our runners exit out of dungeons really quickly, both of which are great time savers.
Now our runners are off, and now we get a look at what our second character is, and it looks like it's Rydia.
Hey!
Mac's going to be very happy about that.
Yes, but I missed the starting item.
It was the pass. The pass is a special item. It's not technically a key item, but we do see it lit up on the tracker because there's only one of it in the seed. It shows up at one of our key item locations, and it offers a shortcut straight to the final boss for when that time comes. We still have to do our objectives first.
Yeah, you technically take the shortcut right now, but it's probably not advised, as you're not going to be able to beat the boss without the crystal. So the scavenger hunt is on for now, and our runners are off. Looks like we're going to a couple different places. Cubs Rule is heading off to the Watery Pass to loot some treasure, and Pkey 4787 heading to Mysidia because we're going to want to find some more characters for this party.
Yeah, we do have our free characters flag turned on, so or rather our no free characters flag is not on, so you can get characters here in Mysidia, in the Watery Pass, as well as in Damcian and Mount Ordeals.
Ooh, and Cubs Rule has just picked up a curse ring, which is another one of those items that is really great to have at the beginning. And we'll talk a little bit about it more, but that will really help with an anchor in the late game in terms of being able to get through a lot of those late game bosses as well as Z.
Yeah, the
And
curse
we're
ring is
seeing
the curse ring is basically a portable anchor for your late game party, so it lets you not have. I won't explain anchoring right this second, as it's not super relevant at this point in the seed, but agility is complicated.
yeah, it's kind of a peace of mind for our runners right now. We also see PK doing a little bit of shopping over there in Mysidia. One of the features that Free Enterprise has is what's called starter kits, and we were able to have our runners start with some items, sell a bunch of rune rings at the start, so having a little bit of influx of cash right at the beginning of this seed.
So we've noticed that both of our runners have headed straight to the Watery Pass. Is there a particular reason why both these runners went here?
Yeah, the loot in the Watery Pass with our current treasure settings is weighted to be higher value overall than some of the loot in other places on the overworld. So now both runners are, Cubs Rule is almost done looting out the entire Watery Pass, which with Tella you can walk through the whole thing and then exit out from the very end, which saves about a minute. And oh my goodness, there's a second curse ring, because why not?
Yeah,
But,
really only one is going to be needed, but
The
there's
second is
always
money.
use for money. Yeah.
yeah, free money is never a bad thing. But yeah, the Watery Pass tends to have it's a larger area, so there's a decent amount of treasure there, but it's also fairly out of the way. There's not a key item check here. There's not really a reason to go to the Watery Pass in the randomizer.
Yeah, other than that treasure hunting, as we saw, now it looks like both of our runners, or at least PK, is heading right up to Damsian Castle, whereas Cubs Rule is checking a boss location at the back of the Watery Pass and not being happy with what they found.
No,
Yeah.
but the reason why he's checking that boss is because we are actually on a demist hunt. Because free item is turned off on this flag set. So the only way to get our 17th key item is to find and kill the demist and then go back and visit Rydia's mom. So we will see our runners kind of do some spot checks on some of these boss spots that they won't end up fighting, just in case that is our demist.
One of the interesting things is our runners don't need to actually enter the battle in order to know what the boss is, because the sprite that the overworld or in dungeon sprite for the boss is changed to match that of the actual boss that you're seeing, not what would be there in the original game too.
Yeah, and we do have a few sort of custom sprites for some of the bosses. Demist has an icy sprite that's very distinctive. The CPU gets an orb, but there are some bosses that have identical sprites.
Yeah, and that makes things fun. But right now we've got our runners heading up Mount Hobbs for another character check, and we're seeing a boss at the top, Leviathan, up here as well.
Now, you may be wondering, how did Leviathan end up on Mount Hobbs? And that is because this randomizer actually randomizes all of the places of where the original bosses are. So you can fight some bosses you would normally see underground in the overworld, and they kind of change their agility, their attack, and their defense stats, depending on what spot you find them in.
Yep, bosses will take the stats of whatever the spot that you find them in. So our normally early game spots will still have bosses that are scaled to be early game power, but they will retain the script of whatever that boss is. So Leviathan is still going to throw out big waves and then cast Ice 2.
Yeah, but the damage that the Ice 2 is going to be based on that boss spot. We see some divergence in the parties that we've got on our runners now, as both twins, Palom and Porum, have joined PK's side, whereas Edward is over on Cubs Rule's side. So different philosophies in party composition so far early in this seed.
Yeah, I think that difference comes from Cubs Rule not having been to Mysidia to get those two free characters, so it doesn't have access to the Kmain or the Palom that were in Mysidia.
And now another use of the exit spell, as PK is done with the fight, uses Tella's utility there to get out, and we're going to see where he decides to go next. Cubs Rule right behind him on this check, where right up here at the top of Mount Hobbs.
And it does look like Pkey is flying over to Fabul, kind of following that vanilla pathway a little bit, which makes sense because, like we mentioned earlier, the bosses kind of increase in difficulty. But we do see Pkey doing some shopping, trying to find some defense items and some better attack items than what we originally start with.
Yeah, and also equipping that strength ring that I believe is in the dwarf starter kit as well, to give Kmain just a little bit of extra oomph on his attack power.
And now Pkey has triggered the start of this fight here for the full Fabul defense, and we're going to get another boss check here. Meanwhile, Cubsrule is heading the opposite direction over to Antlion Cave, another early boss spot. Pkey is going to be fighting Behemoth here, while Cubsrule is climbing down to the bottom of the Antlion Cave.
Yes, and you might notice that Cubs is just going straight down because he has looked like he's looted enough for the early game for him, since he did loot that full watery pass. And the weight area of these chests are not nearly as high as the watery pass. So he's just going straight down to the boss to try and get that next key item.
Yeah, the Antlion Cave is an ungated key item check, so all the treasures nearby are not going to be weighted super highly. But, ooh, that is a fun encounter here to find in the Antlion Cave, as Cubsrule has discovered the Altar Gauntlet. Because we like to randomize things, seeing the Fabul Gauntlet show up, which is essentially a boss fight in the vanilla game that would be 6 fights against a whole bunch of regular enemies, we figured, we don't want to just move these regular enemies around and scale them. We're going to have the Gauntlet pull from enemies from the actual surrounding area. So Cubsrule will be fighting 5 fights taken from Antlion Cave.
Which, you would think these enemies in here aren't that difficult. But at this early of a game, without too much great gear or J items, this fight is going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, this shouldn't be a very difficult fight for Cubsrule, but it'll take some time. Meanwhile, Pkey has finished the fight in Fabul and is rewarded with the Legend Sword. Now, when you see the objectives at the bottom, objective number 1, forge Legend Sword with adamant. So we're kind of halfway there, right?
Well, sort of. We have the Legend Sword. We still need to find the adamant. We, of course, also need to get underground, which requires either the Magma Key or the hook to get to the underground, which is where Kokol's Forge is located. And then, of course, to finish the seed, we would need access to Zeromus, although that's been taken care of by that starting pass.
Yeah, so without having to get that darkness crystal to get to the moon, we might see that our runners may not have to go to the moon, depending on where all these key items are on Earth.
Runners would kind of like to avoid the moon if they can, because there's a lot of very difficult boss fights potentially up there, and we want to get through this as quickly as possible.
There are difficult boss fights up there, but there's also a lot of experience up there.
Yeah, and as somebody who might be a bit familiar to RPGs, grinding is something that you still need to figure out how to do in this game before you get to Zeromus.
That is very true. And not only is there a lot of experience on the moon, but there's also a lot of key item checks. Because in this flag set, not only do we see our 17 regular main key item checks, where you would normally get these items in the vanilla game, but we've also expanded the checks that you have to make with adding summon spots as well as moon spots. So now we're up to 28 different checks that you have to make to potentially find these key items we need to finish this race.
And this Altar Gauntlet has borne fruit, as the reward for completing this is the Magma Key, and that is one of the 2 ways that you can use to get to the underworld in this game. You drop it down the well in Agart, and the rocks blow a hole, and you can fly down into the underworld to get to those particular checks. And Cubsrule has done that, but now has decided to make a detour in Baron, and looks like we're going to have yet another character check and another potential key item right here in the inn.
And look, Tella has found a Tella.
That is one thing to bring up. You can have duplicate characters in this flag set if you so desire. I don't expect any of our runners to be taking a second Tella onto the team, as generally 2 utility mages that are kind of okay at everything but not good at any one thing is not preferable to having these specialized characters. But I don't know, maybe Edward leaves the party.
And we're seeing a little bit of divergence in our parties as Pkey has decided it's time to go underground, whereas Cubsrule wants to do this check before that. It looks like the second fight here in the Baron Inn is going to be the Mom Bomb. Now that's a very interesting boss in this flag set, eh, Zeno?
Yeah, this is a very interesting fight in that this spot is punchy. The Mom Bomb's punches are going to hurt. It also gets 9,000 extra hit points wherever it lands to make sure that it gets to go through its explosion and turn into a bunch of little bombs.
So, to summarize, it's going to be annoying basically wherever you find it because it's going to be healthier than you would normally expect a boss to be wherever you find it.
Yeah, and this 9,000 hit points at this spot ends up being roughly triple the original spot's HP.
But we do see Cubs making good use of the Sylph summon, which, wee woo, but it'll help knock down some of those hit points for sure.
And the nice thing about that Sylph summon is that it doesn't actually cost Rydia any MP to use it because of a glitch known as the Silph Glitch, which is as long as Rydia has 25 MP to cast Sylph and she's not in that middle slot in the party, she can keep casting Sylph over and over again.
Pkey in the underworld heading to Dwarf Castle got a little bit bodied by one of the dwarves blocking a stairway, but also finds some sirens. Now that's not an item that I am familiar with from when I was playing Final Fantasy II as a kid.
Yeah, we added back in all of the Japanese items to the game, the items that were in the Japanese version. So we have a bunch of items that do a whole bunch of different things. There's items that cast area, Ice 1s, Ice 2, Fire 1, Fire 2, Wit 1, Wit 2. A whole bunch of different items that cast a whole bunch of different spells essentially on use. But sirens are special in that they summon the rarest encounter in an area and get you into a fight with that encounter, which can be very useful in a few different places as a grind option. And speaking of J items, here's Pkey buying some coffins which cast Fatal, and Silk Webs which cast an extra powerful version of Slow.
Yeah, so we will see these J items used throughout this run, especially in the mid and late game with some of these later fights, as well as when it's time to grind.
You see Pkey also checking the job dwarf. This one dwarf in this room in Tomra does have a different job every seed. Also point out, a little bit unfortunate over on Cubsrule's side, that Mom Bomb proved to be the undoing of his team, so had to take a wipe and now is back. And based on where the save was, I think Cubsrule might have to go through that Alt Gauntlet again, and that's just too bad.
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean, when you save is a big part of like how often you want to enter the menu to get into that save. When you're doing a race, you want to avoid it as often as possible, but this is the risk that you take by not saving as often.
What is this we see over on Pkey's side? It looks like an egg.
Yeah, so this is an encounter that you can summon via a siren in this one particular part of the underground. It's a very lucrative encounter for experience, and it's just a single egg. So Pkey is going to use a coffin on that egg, kill it with an instant death ability, or an instant death item, essentially, and get a whole bunch of experience, which I believe the goal there was just to get Palom up to the Quake spell, which is a very good spell for him.
Yeah, that's one of the neat things about Free Enterprise. In the vanilla game, you only have Palom and Porum for a short amount of time, but they are developed to have all of the spells in the White Mage and Black Mage sort of repertoire. But when they get them is a lot different than Rosa and Rydia, who you normally have in the game. So it's really nice to have Palom because he can get that Quake spell like something like 20 levels before Iridia. Do you know the difference offhand, PK? Or excuse me, Xeno. PK probably does too.
I think it's a 21 level difference. Palom learning it at 23, and Rydia learning it at, I think, level 44 or something.
Yeah,
so it is sizable.
And Quake is a very powerful spell. Both of our runners now taking a trip up Mount Ordeals. There is a key item check at the end of this. We have to go through 3 bosses, a cutscene, and you can't use exit to get out of this. This kind of seems like it might be a little bit of a waste of time.
But the upside of doing Mount Ordeals is there are 2 characters who get significantly upgraded after completing this check. The first of which is this Tella that we have in the party. Will learn all of his spells as he does in the vanilla game once you complete Mount Ordeals. Even Meteo. I still won't have enough MP to cast it, but we'll at least learn it. Although we may see ways around that.
Unless there might be an item that you can use.
There is an item that we can use to raise MP, so we'll see if our runners end up finding one of those Soma drops. But for now, the other reason you come up here is because Cecil, who is the protagonist of Final Fantasy IV and considered one of the better characters in the game, if not the best character in the game, won't be a paladin unless you complete Mount Ordeals. And Dark Knight Cecil, well, you can level him up to higher levels. It does not get anything better than that Black Sword and is very limited by his relatively weak gear.
We're seeing a couple of the 4 Fiends of Elements up here on the top of Mount Ordeals. Rubicant in the first spot and Mylon Z in the second. PK falling victim to one of the sort of like you wouldn't expect it of Mylon Z, but he is actually flying and thus immune to Quake.
Because Final Fantasy will do Final Fantasy things.
This game is well programmed in that the only way they could think to make the Fiend of Earth immune to the only Earth attack in the game, Quake, was to make him flying, which does also mean he's weak to spears and arrows.
There's a lot of fascinating things you learn about this game by switching around characters and spells and bosses and everything like that. But after those 2 fights, PK now into the shrine at the top of Mount Ordeals. There is one final fight in here. This one is usually a lot easier, very low HP for this spot. But first we get to see yet another key item spot here. Oh, and that is the rat tail.
Yeah, that is part of another objective. We can't quite turn that in yet. We need to find the hook to be able to move the hovercraft over to those shoals near the Adamant Grotto to turn that in. But once we get access to that, we can turn that in right away, and that will be not only an objective, but also another key item check.
And it is really nice to know that, doing a long check like Ordeals pays off when it is required. So I know these runners have to feel a little good about using all this time.
Absolutely, and we see that Sylph Summon still coming into effect quite a bit for Cubs Rule over there on the right-hand side of your screen. And we see on PK, after completing the fight there against Yang, we've got an upgraded Cecil's if we should find him, as well as a full spell list for Tella. Still hanging on at that 90 MP though, so got to pick and choose when to use your magic with Tella.
Yeah, his MP pool is very limited, and access to spells like Fire 3, Ice 3, and Lit 3 is really powerful, and can be ridiculously powerful in the early game. He can only cast those like 3 times, and then he's done.
And when you're going into the battles, you might say, like, hey, I recognize these characters, but they don't really look the same as what I saw when I was playing the game as a kid. And I think we got to shout out the lovely Scala Kitty here for making custom palettes in battle for our characters. And those are randomized just like everything else.
Oh, absolutely. There's, I forget what the exact number is, but every character has, 12 palettes. Scala could correct me if I am wrong, but I believe it's 12 palettes per character. and they are all wonderful.
Pkey now getting on with a Mom Bomb fight, which he had skipped a little bit earlier as Cubs Rule defeats the Karate Man in the shrine at the top of Mount Ordeals.
Now, we will see Pkey using this Quake spell with his Palom, and that should really help him knock out this extra 9,000 HP and get through this fight relatively quickly.
Alternatively, he might decide to just wait for the explosion to happen because this spot doesn't have very high magic power, and then use Quake on all of the bombs afterwards.
And that does seem to be the plan, and that's the difference. Like, it takes a little bit more time to go down, find those sirens, that coffin, and grind out that one egg fight, but that does make this fight and others a lot easier to deal with based on that. So, you invest a little bit of time early to save a lot of time late, and that's kind of the philosophy that Pkey was doing right there.
And we are rewarded with the Tower Key. So that makes a very interesting question come up. Because both of our runners will have now completed all of the current open objectives and spots to check. So where are you going to be checking next?
Well, for Pkey at least, he has the entire underground available to him. It can go to Dwarf Castle, could go up the Tower of Lower Babel, where there is both a check at the very top, where you would fight Dr. Luge in the vanilla game, and then also can use that tower, which is where you get the Tower Key normally in the vanilla game, and then you can also use the Tower Key to blow up in the Super Cannon, which gives you yet another check. Or there's also like a free item just hanging out in the Feymarch, if you want to walk down that way.
Yeah, that would be the chest where in the vanilla game you would get the rat tail, but it looks like Dwarf Castle is the current target for Pkey, as Cubs Rule has gone back to Mount Hobbs to have us, because of that timing with that save earlier, wants to go and defeat that Leviathan again. And again, I think that was where Quorum was?
I think that's right. Pkey finding one of our slowest bosses in the game, the CPU.
Yeah, this CPU has the two nodes in front of it, the attacker and the defender. All the attacker does is spam Mazer, which deals 1/10 of the max HP of the character. All the defender does is heal the CPU, and the CPU itself just walls up. But if the two nodes in front are defeated, it will launch a devastating attack called Globe 199, which will almost certainly kill two characters.
Yeah, Globe 199 is an extremely powerful attack. It will spit out two Globe 199s. They're single target, fortunately. And then it will revive the other two orbs, so it can start healing itself back up and doing damage to you again.
Cubs Rule now going back down Antlion Cave, knows that he's going to have to face that Altar Gauntlet, but now will be knowing about it at the beginning might help a little bit. Be aware, we saw doing a little bit of acquiring characters and abilities to deal with these battles a bit quicker than the first time around.
Yeah, it looks like it's setting up Palom to be able to sweep all of the fights in this Altar Gauntlet quickly.
Now that was a cheeky spell used on Pkey's side. He actually quaked the floating orbs, which are in fact not floating at all.
Yeah, the Mylon Z does fly. The CPU floating orbs do not float. And now we're seeing this icy sprite that you had mentioned a little bit earlier, Xenocat. This is going to be the D-Mist in the second fight here.
Yeah, so this will be a bonus check, essentially, added to Dwarf Castle once the runners go back to Mist Village to talk to Rydia's mom. In addition to the regular item that you get from Dwarf Castle after just defeating the two bosses here.
And also a little bit of a character change here. Edge, the ninja, has joined the party. Pretty useful character, I would say.
Yeah, Edge is a very useful character. His damage scales pretty rapidly, especially with the two, but he does require 2 weapons, so you have to get a little bit luckier on the loot. You can't just find the one really nice weapon and be like, all set for Edge. Edge, he really wants both of his weapons to be pretty good quality.
But he can chuck all the things that you find for the characters you don't have. Well, most of the things anyway.
I hope you all enjoyed this Ghost Hand, kind of an artifact of the Super Nintendo limitation on colors. Since we changed the sprite to the D-Mist, the color of the hand is subsequently changed to for this little ghostly view.
Oh, and Pkey is only rewarded with the white shirt, but is also rewarded with a white shirt.
I mean, the white shirt is a pretty decent item. It gives plus 15 to your will stat, which affects white magic. And it's also a pretty decent piece of armor. There's a reason it's a tier 7 item on our 8-tier system for rating items in this game.
Definitely, if not an end-game piece of gear, a near end-game piece of gear. And now Pkey477 heading right up to the Village Mist. As we mentioned, since defeating Village D-Mist in the village, you can talk to Rydia's mom and get another check here.
Now, why did Pkey enter from the right side of the Mist Village?
Because if Pkey had gotten the package from that D-Mist, Pkey would have been locked out of leaving Mist Village on the same to the left.
Oh,
because
yeah, that's a good point.
If you pick up the package, there's a tile right by the entrance on the left side of Mist Village. Would have forced Pkey to go right into that package cutscene, and that package cutscene is long.
And it does enable a character check, but there's no key item check in that process. So yeah.
Yes, it may be an objective, but even after you sit through the first cutscene, it then makes it so that in order to enter Kaipo, the desert town, you then have to sit through another cutscene. And I think Pkey is more interested in retaining access to Kaipo right now.
And so after avoiding the potential for that, has flown back underground and is now in the Tower of Babel, the lower half of it. And there are 2 checks here. JMac, I think you mentioned them a little bit earlier, but we do have 2 since that tower key has been a part of our inventory now.
Yes, and so now the Tower of Babel underground becomes a 2-item check because you can always go up to the top of tower once you have access underground because the tower is open. But now that we found that tower key above ground, we can now also enter the super cannon room. So that allows for us to get 2 checks for the 1 climb up and back down this tower. Because, just like Mount Ordeals, you cannot exit out of this tower because of some vanilla game mechanics. So it is a very long walk up and a long walk back.
Yeah. And that super cannon room is not terribly close to the bottom of the tower, so having to walk up here, then back down, and then come back later for a super cannon check just doesn't feel great.
And now that he is in the underworld, we see Cubsrule starting this underground process very similarly to what we saw Pkey4787 do a little bit earlier. Go into the shops in Dwarf Castle, find those sirens, and is now here in destroying an egg. But we didn't see Cubsrule go to the get those coffins, so it is going through some different tactics to take care of this safely. We also see Cubsrule knock out Tella for this fight. Wouldn't you want to make sure that you're getting experience on all of your party members?
Well, actually, this plays in a little bit to the anchoring thing we were talking about earlier. Tella is naturally a very slow character, and other than his utility spells, he's not very useful for damage. So keeping him down and preventing him from getting experience, and most importantly, gaining agility, will allow essentially him to be used as an agility anchor. Which the premise of that agility anchoring is that whoever you have in your middle slot, ATB will always fill in 5 ticks because this game is very well programmed. And they were just figuring out how to do an ATB system. So everyone else is calculated relative to that person. So if everyone else is 2.5 times faster than your middle slot character, their ATBs all fill in 1 tick. This is widely considered to be very good.
But don't worry, if all of this sounds like calculus to you, that's okay. Because in the vanilla game, a lot of the times you don't even really pay attention to the agility stats. And so trying to understand agility in the free enterprise randomizer is something that takes people a long time. I've been around this community for a year and I still don't really understand it, and that's okay.
Yeah, the other thing is the vanilla game ties it to Cecil always, and since he's almost always in your party. And so you don't really notice it because Cecil is an actually useful character that you would never want to leave down casually.
Absolutely. And now, after that, we're seeing some more divergences. Cubs Rule is the first one to make a trip down into the land of summoned monsters, or the Fey March, whereas Pkey has defeated the Octomam at the top of the tower, was rewarded with just a ninja shirt, but now finds Keinatsu here in the tower key room. And it is the spoon. This piece of flatware is actually a key item in this game. So very nice pickup there for Cubs Rule in the free chest in the Fey March.
Yeah, the spoon doesn't really unlock anything. It's just a really nice, powerful dart for Edge to throw. But it still counts as a key item towards the 10 key item experience bonus that our runners will get. Once they collect 10 key items, all experience is doubled.
Now, hang on, Xenocat, because the spoon is not only just a key item. Because in this randomizer, there's a certain character that can equip it, and it can become as powerful as a crystal sword. And I think I see some emotes in our chat right now. But spoon word is a thing that this community really loves. So don't discount that.
We did add a special flag that is on in this flag set that allows our favorite Spoony Bard to equip the spoon and do massive amounts of damage. He still has no hit points, though.
That is true. Oh,
And
that
PK
tower.
getting a suit of armor for completing that super cannon room. That's a bit of a delayed check, but no key items for completing the tower. So depending on when Cubs decides to go over to the Tower of Babel, that's something that could save him a little bit of time. And now it's over to Baron for Pkey4787 after getting that. I believe that was from Dwarf Castle. You might have to remind me. I always forget things halfway through. But
the Baron key was from the top of tower check.
Oh, I thought that was a ninja shirt. My bad. That's on me. But we see Cubs Rule going over to Mysidia, and this is something that's also been added to this version of Final Fantasy IV. You could go in and, depending on the flag set, of course, you could go in and get a character that you didn't have before. And looks like Cubs Rule wants to make use of that Edward with the spoon, picks up the bard, and equips that spoon right away.
I mean, Edward with a spoon is just as powerful as is more powerful than any other character, except barring a Crystal Sword Cecil, or maybe an Excal wielding Cecil.
Well, Cecil is extremely strong, and so that makes sense as well. But now we've got this check down here Now, we're seeing also a check for Cubs rule over in Fabul. Now that underground access has been there, we went and talked to Yang at the bottom of the the bottom of the Silph Cave, and that means that triggers the first check with Yang's wife here in Fabul, and so that is yet another key item check. This is where you would normally get the pan. And Pkey now at the first boss check in the Baron thing. Now, this fight itself will not yield a key item, but it is essential to beat this one before going to the other bosses, which do have key item checks. This one being the fight that you'd normally see in Kaipo, very easily dispatched with a Quake spell. And now it's on to the second boss, which is the vanilla Kainatsu fight. Meanwhile, Cubs Rule has not done this for Bull Defense as to defeat this Behemoth.
And it looks like we've had both of our guards fights in the Baron Inn, and both of these fights are what we would consider to be free bosses, meaning that these fights can be destroyed pretty quickly with just some regular J items and magic spells, because they don't actually have the boss bit in them, which you don't really learn until you randomize the game and break it down like we have.
Yeah, these fights are originally just basically random enemies that were thrown into a scripted fight for the purposes of the vanilla game. But we moved them around too, because we have to move everything around. More random is better, except entrances. We need to make sure everyone knows where they're going.
And this liberation of Baron Castle also yields a character check, and Pkey rewarded with Fusiya, the Lunarian. Meanwhile, Cubs Rule from that Sheila check, Yang's wife is named Sheila, has received the Earth Crystal, which will open up the Tower of Zot.
And not just the Tower of Zot. The Earth Crystal also opens up the Troya Treasury, which is the single highest weighted area in the game for loot.
And it looks like Cubs Rule is heading right on over there. We'll see if he decides to dip in the treasury. We'll see if that happens here.
Yeah, we do have it looks like he's going for it. We do have a special game that we like to play in our community when a runner goes to open the Troya Treasury. So I think we're going to be playing a round of... Oh, it's right that treasury. Sorry, little technical difficulties behind the scenes there. That was an okay treasury.
Yeah.
The defense sword is really nice pickup for Kane there. One of his best weapons in the game, without a doubt. But yeah, if there's an Artemis bow, that's pretty nice.
Yeah.
It's a black shirt I saw. So, I mean, a lot of utility items, nothing like really stand out-ish.
Yeah, that glass hat is really nice for Edward, just to give him a little bit more physical defense.
And Pkey has returned into Baron to check the basement. This is where you'd normally fight Odin for the summon, but as J-Mac mentioned earlier, the places where you acquire these summons are also potential key item checks. So we find Ashura down here. There's a couple of ways to deal with her. It looks like the way that Pkey has decided to go is to cast Wall on her so that her healing magic will be reflected onto the team.
Yeah, and also has equipped a Mute Knife onto Edge. This means that Edge will now do 4 times damage to mages, which Asura counts as a mage.
Now Cubs Rule climbing up the Tower of Zot. There's a couple of bosses up here, a couple of character checks, but we're getting to the point where I think our runners are going to be pretty happy with the characters that they've got. When you've got a seed or a flag set like we've got today with a lot of characters available at the beginning, you really get to finesse and figure out exactly who you want in your team, and that's what a lot of the early game has been.
Yeah, Pkey has been able to find that Edge and that Fu, which are both really great characters, whereas Cubs Rule has, with that Spoon, has been able to make pretty good use out of that Edward to be essentially the replacement for at least the Edge.
And here in the first fight, we see the D-Lunars. This is a fight that you'd normally get in the vanilla game at the Lunar Subterrane. A very scary boss. They have some physical attacks, some AoE fire damage, and a nasty breath attack, as well as if you use magic on them, they have a script that their script changes into reflecting viruses off themselves. So it can be a very scary fight.
And it does look like we have a required Barren Basement, because one of our objectives is burn the village with the package. And so we will probably see PK head straight there to go ahead and get objective 4 knocked off his belt. And that is one less objective that he has to get this run.
Yeah, that is the first objective we're actually able to complete so far. We've had pieces of some of the others with the Legend Sword for that first objective and the Rat Tail for that last one, but that package objective being found is the only requirement for burning the village mist.
We are also running low on checks overall for key items here on the blue planet. I think we might be got these 2 bosses down at the bottom of the Fey March. I remember seeing Galbas down there with Cubsrule Peak down there earlier, as well as this Tower of Zotin. That's about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think those are the only checks left. The other boss, I believe, was Dark Elf down here in the Fey March, which isn't too bad. Golbez, however, Golbez is rather rude.
Yeah, definitely a double R there and rather rude. But Cubsrule has gotten up to the top. We see another Kane up here, and there's going to be another character. I don't think this Kane is super interesting at this point.
No, I think what we're looking for is a Cecil or an...
Yes, we found him. There's our paladin.
Yeah, now that is quite a strong party member to join the team. But nope. Oh, no, that's no to Kane. And no to the other Kane. So, bye-bye Kanes. And here we are.
I mean, to be fair, Cecil is largely a better version of Kane. Kane has a few extra weapons that he can equip, like Dragoon Lances and White Spears that exploit a few specific weaknesses, but Cecil just has better stats and can make better use of that defense sword, which, in terms of raw attack power, would be Kane's ultimate weapon. The defense sword's like Cecil's 3rd best weapon.
Now, it'll be interesting over on Cubsrule's side because he picked up this base level Cecil. We are about to see something else that Free Enterprise allows us to do, in that when a character is a lot of levels underneath the rest of your party, you can actually slingshot their XP and get double XP compared to the rest of the party if you are an average of 5 levels or more lower than the rest of your party. Except for the fact that Cecil died, so never mind.
Yeah, you do have to be alive at the end of a fight to get experience.
So we'll see that eventually.
Now, it is that Dark Elf that PK has decided to try out first. The Dark Elf will use this trio of elemental attack spells. They're not particularly strong. And then we'll use a weak spell, which will reduce somebody to single digits, and then we'll use Whisper and turn somebody into a pig. So that's basically the rotation that the Dark Elf does until it gets to be, about halfway through with its HP, and then it turns into a Dark Dragon, which has its own things that it does.
But we did see, on Cub's side, we did see a Darkness Crystal, which means that now he can go up to the moon. Now, why would you want to go up to the moon at this point in the seed?
Well, simple density math. That's where most of the remaining key item checks are. Every single boss fight in the Lunar Subterrane has a key item check for us. 2 in the Ribbon Room behind the Vanilla D Lunars fight. And Cave Bahamut is its own key item check as well. So that's a total of 7 checks up there.
And we were just talking about how there's fewer and fewer checks remaining on the blue planet, so that is an option. There's also a character check up there as well as a shop. Those are less important at this point than the key items, but it still is noteworthy. Cubs Rule now taking a second swing at this Mom Bomb, who got the better of him earlier, and the Dark Elf has now been felled by Pkey-4787, and we are going to see if this is going to be something important as well, and we are rewarded with just an Odin summon, so not required at all.
Yeah, PK did show off some pretty niche strats there of showing off that the Dark Dragon form of the Dark Elf doesn't have the boss bit, so you can totally just stop it, and then it won't take any turns anymore.
We also saw PK use a Kamikaze on his Fusia to take out his Palom. Why would he want to do that? Like, this isn't anchoring things. We talked about that with Tella. That makes sense. Why would he have wanted to do that?
Keeping Palom at a low level, maybe PK is planning on doing some sort of big slingshot grind, where he's going to be getting a whole bunch of experience all in one fight, and if Palom is 5 levels or more below the median party level, which should be either Kane or Edge's level, since Fu starts at level 50 and has just tons of levels, does not need experience. Palom will get doubled experience, and if PK gets 10 key items before that point, those multipliers stack.
Well, I think there is also... sorry, I was kind of setting you up because knowing that Golbez was right next door, having 2 characters up at the beginning is pretty nice, but this is still a tough fight at this point, as we see Kane has already gone down, but now we've got a berserked Kane in this fight.
Yeah, Kane is not going to be doing a lot of damage, but that's okay because Golbez will be helping.
Yes,
yeah,
pulling that Star Veil up and then using a Bacchus to berserk Kane, he will be able to quickly deal out some damage as well as reflect the spells that Golbez is using. And so even though this takes a while and each of his hits are not super high, he'll still get through this spot a little bit faster than if he tried to, keep all of his characters up at once.
And now Cubs Rule has headed up to the Tower of Babil, and so is going to be rewarded with that Baron key up at the top of the tower. We'll probably just get that crystal mail on the way down as well. We see him opening some chests. Now, there are 4 trapped chests in the Tower of Babil, and trap chest is something that we haven't talked about. What might be a reason that somebody wants to open a chest that has a monster in there waiting for him?
The trap chests do tend to have slightly better loot than the loot you might find outside, although I don't think Cubs Rule necessarily needs that loot, with especially finding that Zeus Gauntlet from an untrapped chest.
Yes,
And
but
PK...
he might be trying to spike one of those nice shiny swords. If you can find one, that makes your Cecil really spectacular.
And we see PK has defeated that Golbez, is rewarded with the hook, which is very important because in order to get to the Adamant Grotto, you do need the hook. And the Adamant Grotto is where you turn in both the rat tail and the pink tail. So that Golbez is a required fight.
Yeah, there is no way around fighting that Golbez in this seed. Because we can only skip one of our objectives, and that hook is required for 2 of them.
And now PK going down to the Sylph Cave will talk to Yang to get that Sheila 1 check in, which is going to be important because that leads to the Earth Crystal, which we know leads to the Darkness Crystal. So that's going to be a chain that PK is starting on now that we've seen Cubs go through already. Whereas Cubs is now going up to the top of the tower, had decided to take on the tower key room on the middle, on the way up rather than on the way down. And now we'll have Octoman fight here at the top of the tower.
And as Chad has pointed out, we really do hope that PK remembers that he did find that package, which it looks like he's flying right over. So hopefully he'll remember that he has that package and actually turns it in, because that is an objective.
I don't think there's a need to be super worried, as the package can't lead to any other objectives behind it, but it definitely wouldn't feel great to completely forget about.
And we see the turn in for the rat tail yields the pan, which means that we might be due for another trip down Sylph Cave, because the pan you use to wake up Yang by whacking it on his head, and then you'll get another key item check by returning that to Sheila there. And we see PK skipping Fabul for now, wants to just make one trip up to Fabul once this second trip to Silph is completed.
Yes, and seeing as PK has full cleared the underground with the exception of doing the sealed cave, which he cannot do yet because of the Luca key, I really respect this play of trying to just go ahead and do as many of the objectives as you have, checks as you have available to you, so that you can know exactly what you're looking for when you go to the moon.
Yeah, this is definitely setting up for a potential to not have to clear every single spot on the moon, because, well, there's a lot of checks on the moon. They're all guarded by rather nasty boss fights.
Wow. And that pan check is required because that gives us our adamant rock, which is the other half of our forge objective.
Oh my goodness. You really cannot leave Golbez alone.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, that Golbez being hard required for a multitude of reasons now. And we see heading on over to Kokol the Smith's shop is PK. Going to give that adamant to him. We'll give him the legend sword. And yeah, this is going to be a nice little prize here, as well as an objective.
And we did see PK do what our community loves to do and robs the old man in the bookcase upstairs. So that's always a good, fun check.
Yeah, I believe this is just going to turn into an Excalibur. But I say just an Excalibur. An Excalibur is Cecil's second best weapon. And PK is very likely to find a Cecil at some point, given that he's hanging out up in the Tower of Zot, which is where our Darkness Crystal is.
And that Excalibur now in the hands of PK, as well as objective number 1 completed for PK. 2 objectives yet to go. Now, it looks like, if you're looking at the scoreboard, that PK is considerably ahead of Cubs, but it's only a couple of checks away. Once Cubs rule goes back down to the Fame Arch and defeats that Golbez, we'll be right on track on those objectives.
Indeed. This also does mean that PK is now 1 key item away from Go mode. He needs to find either the Twin Harp or the Pink Tail.
Yeah, very good point there, because objective number 4 with the Burn Mist is going to be able to be done whenever PK wants to. But yeah, now we're going to get the Earth Crystal for the first check, and here comes the second one. And this is going to kind of let us know if the moon is required. We got the Luca key, so we've got another check on the blue planet available to our runners.
And this brings up a really interesting question regarding routing, because you do get your Earth Crystal, and you also get the Luca Cave check now available to you, and that would complete your underground if you're PK. So what do you think is the best route at this point?
I think while you're here on the overworld, it does make sense to go check out the Tower of Zot. It's right here. Once you're through this, I think there's a very reasonable play from PK to just go walk down the sealed cave really quick, peek what key item is down there, because if the key item down there is something required, like that Twin Harp or the Pink Tail, then that's your go mode, and you can just fight the boss and walk it out. Whereas if it's something that's not a key item, or if it's the sand ruby, which is the only other item left in the pool, you can just reset right out of the cave, and you don't have to make that long walk.
We're seeing one other kind of feature of Free Enterprise on display on Pkey's screen, as you might be wondering why he's going right back to chess, and it looks like he's seeing the item again. What he's really doing is what we have as far as a quality of life feature is the R trigger, which means if you hit the R button on a chest with its... Once you open a chest and it shows you it, you can hit R to automatically throw it away. What it does is it puts it right back in the chest. So if you actually want it, you can go back and get it. But that way, if you get a useless item, it doesn't fill up your inventory slots. And inventory management is a real part of Free Enterprise.
Yeah, the inventory in this game in Final Fantasy IV in general is very limited. And with all the good items that we put in this randomizer, it's really hard to justify trying to hold on to every single one of them.
And while our runners are duplicating some things that we saw before, I want to give a quick shout out to some of the people behind the scenes who have made this possible. First off is Harumph, who is restreaming this for us tonight. Also did some real good work on this layout, making this for everybody. So big shout outs to Harumph. Also want to shout out LMM Motos, or LM Motos. Yeah, if I do it right, doing the tracking, making sure not only we know what key items everybody has, but what objectives they have accomplished so far. So big shout outs to them. And also everybody who's worked on getting this submission scheduled. I know both Asuka and Zoe Vermillion have worked a lot on this, as well as a lot of other people in the community. So big shout outs to them as well.
Yeah, huge shout outs to both, to everyone involved in this restream. And shout outs to the other people on comms with me tonight. Doing a great job, I think. Can't speak for myself, but I'm really enjoying talking with both of you.
Thanks, Cat, you are awesome.
So we see Cubs Rule has gone over to Mist to get that check from Rydia's mom, and now has gone into Baron. Is going to go through that process. And remember, we know that the Assure at the basement of Baron is going to be required, so we'll see how long it takes before Cubs Rule is able to defeat that mage. Meanwhile, Pkey back up for us, because we've seen Cubs Rule already do these fights up here in the Tower of Zod.
Yeah, both of our runners working hard to clear the checks that the other runner has already made. Just trying to clear out as much of the seed as they can. I think Cubs especially trying to clear out any of these main key item locations, especially before thinking about heading to the moon.
Another interesting routing decision with Cubs is Cubs went to the Fame Arch, or the Land of the Summoned Monsters, a lot earlier in the run than Pkey did, and saw those bosses, saw that Galbez, especially in the King spot, and decided to get out of there. And when you make an early play down there and you can't take the bosses, then I think it might be more of a reasonable decision to go up to the moon and just hang on that. Unfortunately for him, we know that that's required because that's where that hook is.
Yeah, that Galbez is a really nasty fight.
And it'll be really interesting to see what Cubs actually does after he completes this Baron.
Right. And we see that Excalibur going onto Cecil right away. Not a big surprise there, as it's been mentioned, his second most powerful weapon, and it's still super strong. It's better than any weapon anybody else gets other than the spoon for Edward.
Yeah, Edward with the spoon tends to be about as strong as Cecil with an Excalibur. Starts out a little bit stronger, but at endgame levels, it ends up evening out to about the same strength just due to Cecil just being a naturally stronger character.
Fake spell taking quick work of these dark imps. And we're seeing one thing that the guards are capable of doing here on Cubs Rule's side as the size spell comes out and makes like Edward's not a big guy, I don't think. He doesn't have a lot of hit points, but really makes him very small there.
Yes, and that is definitely why you want to always try and find some of those higher tier J items when you go shopping. Those coffins and those hourglasses, which will actually stop your fights and your enemies, especially on this fight, because those spells that those guards cast are they're no joke.
Although the sprite that it turns you into kind of is a joke.
Yeah, it's adorable.
And after getting that Darkness Crystal, it's back to the underground for Pkey. Looks like he wants to check out this seal cave, utilize that Luca key that was given to him by Sheila.
Yeah, one flag that we do have that isn't on for this race, but I think is worth mentioning is that if you are interested in this randomizer and you don't like the fact that, oh, some of the bosses can just be killed with, like, fatal spells, we have a flag for that. If you think anything should be different, chances are we have a flag for that.
Yes, we've got a lot of things that you can set to your heart's desire in this randomizer. That's one of the things. There's a flag for everybody, I think.
Yeah. You want all the best stuff in shops and for them to also be free? We got you. You want to be super restricted and have characters leave your party permanently when they die? We also have those flags.
Yes, we like to have a lot of fun with our randomizers. And by fun, I mean terrible, terrible times.
Hey, some of us do like to have fun. Everyone's fun's a little different.
And now Pkey almost at the bottom of this sealed cave, whereas Cubs Rule is now into that Ashura fight, which is going to be very important for him. We're going to see if this trip down to the bottom of this cave is going to bear fruit for Pkey, and it's just a silver apple, and you see a quick reset. Pkey had made a save outside of the cave, so it doesn't have to walk out, or outside of Baron even. It's even further, less of a travel.
Yes, and apparently Pkey was not hungry and did not want to eat that apple.
I mean, we have to fight a boss to get out of there at that point. It's not worth it. But that does exhaust every check on this blue planet for Pkey. So Pkey is now going to head to Mysidia with the Darkness Crystal, raise the big whale, and then be off to the moon.
And because we know we only need one key item, Pkey is only going to have to find either the Twin Harp or the Pink Tail up here, and has 6 moon checks to try and find it.
Yeah, and here we see the big whale being raised from the, I guess I'll call it Mysidia Bay. There isn't really names of bodies of water in Final Fantasy IV, is there?
No, I don't think there are.
No, they don't really get named. There's just, like, the sea.
Well, Mysidia Bay definitely works for me. I think.
Yeah,
I
think that we can call it that.
Oh, Chad is saying it's the Dragon's Mouth.
I mean, that's cool and evocative, but I like the City of Bay too. Mostly because I came up with it.
Well, we are about to see Pkey head into a place we don't normally see runners go. Why is he coming into this lunar path?
There is a trapped chest in the lunar path that we call the hairdryer's chest because I mean, look at them.
Definitely look like my hairdryer.
There's 4 enemies that look a lot like hairdryers, and they aren't super tough to kill, but they give a lot of experience.
Yeah, this is one method to kind of jumpstart your lunar experience, because these will give you a big chunk of experience to get ready. And we're seeing something else here as a life potion is being thrown at these enemies as they die. Do you want to explain what's going on there a little bit, Xenocat?
Yeah, so the way this game works is that life potions and the life 1 spell revive whatever their target is with a number of hit points equal to 5 times that thing's vitality. Every single enemy has a vitality of 0. So what he's doing with these life pots is Pkey is reviving the enemies with 0 hit points, so they die again. Which doesn't do anything in terms of making the fight harder, but does give essentially double experience for every life pot that gets tossed.
And
because
with
you
Pkey
essentially get to kill
having
them again.
10 key items, that is essentially quadrupling the XP from each of those individual hairdryers.
And now we see Cubs Rule is also launching the big whale. Now, Cubs Rule has not defeated that Golbez down at the bottom of the Fey March, so is going to be a little bit behind in completing the objectives without that hook in hand.
Yeah, Cubs will need to go back to Golbez to get that hook, but from his perspective, this is a very reasonable play. That Fey March is not particularly attractive to take on. That those checks are going to take a while, and some of these moon bosses might be faster. Especially since only 4 out of the 5 objectives are required, I might be thinking, oh, I don't need to actually find every single key item.
And so Pkey then makes a quick fly over to Cave Behemoth and finds King Queen Eblin here. Now this is a fight that is generally considered to be pretty easy, I'd say.
Yeah, this might be the freest fight in the game. All it does is cast very low power Fire 2s and Fire 1s. They are scripted to be low power no matter where King and Queen Eblin show up, and after 3 Fire 2s, King Eblin will give a speech about how he's sorry, and then he'll go away. And still give you all the experience.
Meanwhile, on Cubs Rule side, we are seeing one of my new favorite grinds, actually. He is using the Behemoth tiles to do a Behemoth grind.
Yeah, we do have random encounters off by default in the randomizer, but you can turn them on at any point, and if you turn them on and then step onto one of these normal forced encounter tiles like the Behemoths or a trapdoor in Sealed Cave, you can still take those fights, and those fights can be used to force a grind.
Yeah, these Behemoths known to give out quite a bit of experience because, well, they're pretty dangerous in general, but Cubs Rule utilizing the Blink spell as well as kind of interesting positioning from Cecil to use his cover ability to take some of those hits. Why on earth would you want Cecil to be in the back row here? Don't characters do more damage when they're fighting in the front row?
Well, there's two things with that. One, we're focusing on covering, so Cecil gets bonus defense in the back row, and that bonus defense is really helpful. But also, we have a glitch on called the back row glitch, which is that once you equip a ranged weapon into a character's hands, the game forgets to check that you unequipped that ranged weapon, and so it just assumes every weapon that that character equips from then until the end of the game is a ranged weapon.
Yes,
it's great.
And this is a glitch that is in the vanilla game as well, and probably you just never really noticed it. I know I didn't, playing through vanilla as a child, but this is definitely one of those glitches that exists in the real game, and so we like to allow it to be turned on in some of our races.
And so the reward for defeating the King Queen Evelyn was just a rune axe, not a particularly useful piece of gear at this point, but you also get a decent chunk of experience for this fight. And now Pkey has flown over to the Lunar Dais, or the Lunar Palace. On the Lunar Dais, there's a character check. We have Yang, not very interesting to join the party at this time, so we just said goodbye. And now it's down to the bottom of the Lunar Subterrane for some more key item checks. Pkey still looking for either that pink tail or the twin harp.
Yeah, the bottom of this lunar subterrane is where most of the key items are. There's one altar close to the top of the lunar subterrane that Pkey has already passed. There's one on its own little side branch that is coming up very shortly, and then there's three altars all right next to each other, one of which has 2 chests, so you get 2 checks for the price of 1 boss down here at the bottom. So a lot of runners will go right for these chests at the bottom of the lunar subterrane, just because there's so much density right here.
And chat is making a point that, yes, it is just a rune axe, but we have yet to see one of those pesky fights called the Magus Sisters, where that rune axe could very well get played, especially in one of these moon boss locations.
Yeah, these moon bosses have a very rude stats, and some of the early game bosses, when placed here, can be extremely nasty.
Speaking of nasty, we're seeing Baigen here at the vanilla D-lunar spot, and nasty enough to make Pkey want to reset and rethink things. Might just want to heal up, might want to reposition, re-equip before that fight, because that Baigen has a lot of experience. It punches really hard, but you kind of want to do it because there's 2 key item chests right behind it, so that could be a decent spot to find either that pink tail or the twin harp.
Or potentially even both of them. Although, I'm hoping that we just find the twin harp.
Yes, because twin harp, we know, is one of the community's most favorite checks.
I mean, from a speedrun perspective, it is not a great check. It's slow, there's a lot of cutscenes. You fight one boss, and then you get 1 key item. There's no character checks there. It doesn't provide you with a whole lot of power other than it being a check, but it has a very special place in the community.
Now, Cubs Rule seems to be following Pkey4787 very shortly in here in the Lunar Subterrane. And so we'll see if he decides to go to this Baigen fight first or wants to check out one of the other altars here in the Lunar Subterrane beforehand. We're seeing on Pkey's side, Edge making use of the Dart command, which is one of the reasons why Edge is so useful at dealing damage. We call Tella the utility mage, but Edge is really the utility kind of all-around character.
Yeah, Edge can hit things for decent amounts of damage. He can also throw things out of your inventory to do good damage with that command as well. He also has some ninjutsu spells, which are decent AoEs. They're not fantastic. Generally, he's better off hitting things, but if you really need AoE damage on a bunch of very weak enemies, he can sweep those.
Now we do see
and he can blink himself.
Yeah, we do see Cubs Rule headed into the White Spear altar, probably because he only has 9 key items, and he's hoping to spike a 10th key item from this altar before heading to that really huge experience spot next door in the Ribbon Room. And we do see that he has found the dolls, which is another one of those really interesting fights regarding boss bits. Because you can stop or freeze or size the back bits, but not the front ones. But the front ones have less hit points than the back. So that kind of makes this fight a lot more tolerable to prevent that big doll from actually forming. And as we see Cubs Roll, he uses Toad to toad the back 3. And then hopefully we'll make quick work out of the rest of these dolls for a really easy fight.
And Pkey has now defeated Baigen, get a nice chunk of experience right there, one of the best spots in the game. Finds the twin harp.
Yay!
Yay!
PK is in Go mode, but more importantly, finds the twin harp before the pigtail, which means we get to talk about the wonder that is the twin harp check in this randomizer.
Oh,
So-
I'm
I
so
believe
excited.
PK is making a beeline there, so why don't we talk about that a little bit before we get there? Because we're going to want to be a little bit quiet once we're actually there. And Xenocat, I'll hand this off to you for sure.
So basically, what we do with our twin harp check is normally Eddie plays his own little song. It's cute, you know. But we thought, what if we randomized that? So we have now a pool of a little over 400 random songs from a variety of video games, mostly video games, some pop culture things in there as well. And Eddie will be choosing one song at random to play in each seed. So we'll be seeing what that song is once PK is done with this package cutscene that he has now started, because this is also an objective. And the twin harp puts you right next to where the pastor is in Troya.
Ooh, there's another Cecil. I don't think we're going to be collecting that Cecil. As mentioned before, this is kind of a long check that we've got going on here if you wanted to get him.
Yeah, we could theoretically pick this Cecil up, but that's an extra boss fight. We'd have to go out of the way. He'd join at like base level. We don't want to have base level Cecil.
But Village Mist has now been burned to the ground over on PK4787 screen, and so that is objective number 4 completed. And we've got the twin harp in hand. Cave Magnus is going to be the next destination, and we are getting very close to the end of this seed.
Yes, and we do see Cubs Rule, who's now fighting Baigan. He did get nothing. Nope, the Sand Ruby, sorry. The Sand Ruby from that White Spear Altar, so he will also get double XP from this spot.
Yeah, Cubs
Which is-
Rule not getting a progression key item, but getting a key item at least.
Yeah, it's still a little bit unfortunate since that Golbez is still lingering down at the bottom of the Fame Arch for Cubs. Of course, he doesn't know that. He's making his routing decisions, I think, have been pretty good based on where he went earlier, especially considering he had that unfortunate wipe near the beginning of the seed and is trying to save time by not going back down to that Fame Arch check. So, like, it makes a lot of sense that he's doing this. It's just unfortunate that it's not going to pay off for him this time.
Yeah, fortunately, once you get started on the moon, it's very easy to just continue to snowball with the power level on the moon and keep clearing checks on the moon. So the rest of this moon shouldn't take too terribly long unless the bosses are especially rude.
Now that we are at the bottom of the Cave Magnus, I think we've been talking about this. We've been very excited. We're going to get to hear a piece of music. Once this is ready to go, we're going to be quiet because it's time for all of you to listen in to a little bit of DJ Spoony B's Rockin' Tunes.
And that was a lovely rendition of Kuja's theme from Final Fantasy IX, this seed.
Yeah, wonderful little piece of harp music that we get there. We see Pkey completing that objective, now gets the crystal. It is worth noting that that is one of the things that we can kind of seed into a seed, as it were, for possible incentives.
Yeah, that heart. It's very easy for us to, not very easy, but we can manually choose it. Usually we do not. Just in the spirit of randomization, but it is possible.
Yeah, so that definitely could be a really great incentive.
Now, another thing that might be an incentive is something that we're going to be seeing very shortly here on PK4787's screen. What do we got going on here, J-Mac?
Well, it looks like chat has thrown in some Z's into the chat, and I don't know if that's really supposed to be signifying nap time. I thought that Tella got his nap earlier in the seed.
If I may, I think what they're referring to is the fact that we have a pool of over 550 random sprites that Zeromus can choose from, because Zeromus is big and scary. We can't randomize him into the boss pool like we can with all the other bosses where we move them around. But we have to randomize him somehow. So what we do is we assign him one of 500 sprites, or 550 sprites-ish, many designed by the wonderful Scala Kitty. And we have no idea what sprite we're about to see. So, J-Mac, if you'd like to ask the question that's on everybody's mind.
Oh, yes. Every race we have, we like to ask a little question. Whose butt are we going to kick tonight?
Absolutely. It is butt time, and we are going to find out very shortly as this crystal is being thrown over on PK4787's screen.
Sub-questions include how many butts? Is this butt cute? Where are the butts? Etc., etc.
Oh, interesting. Cubs will find the pink tail. So, yeah, still going to need to kill that Galvez, but I think this is the definition of a cute butt. As we got Hello Miss, or Hello Kitty Miss, if we had more letters to work with.
Yeah, I would say this is one of the cuter butts in the pool.
Absolutely. Definitely a cute butt. And we do see Cubsrule headed back down to Earth. Has decided that he's found the twin harp as well as the pink tail, and hopes that the hook is in fact behind that Golbez that he skipped earlier.
And it's also worth noting that whatever appearance that Zeromus has here, the script is exactly the same as the vanilla game. So it's going to be throwing out nasty big bang attacks and everything like that. But we have PK mitigating as much as he can. We're having the Berserk spell, meaning that our characters will be acting as quickly as possible, as strong as possible, and shouldn't be too long for this fight to be won.
Yeah, the first Big Bang comes out. Tella goes down, not too concerning. Tella was mostly here to make sure everyone else goes fast, because Zeromus has a very high agility value. So Zeromus is... in vanilla, you might get Zeromus down to about relative agility 2. But by using Tella in the middle, we can make Zeromus and our entire party relative agility 1, whereas in vanilla playthrough, you would normally be in the general like 4 or 5. Some of like Rosa and Rydia would probably be even slower, like 6 or 7.
And to be fair, 1 is very fast.
1 is extremely fast, yes. 1 means that your ATB fills up every tick, which is about 6 to 7 frames, I think. So yeah, 1 is extremely fast.
And you may have noticed too that that first Big Bang really didn't do that much damage, and that is because we saw Pkey actually do what we call nerf the Big Bang, and by direct casting a spell onto Zeromus and causing that nuke reaction, it will actually nerf the damage done by the Big Bang, so that a lot of your party members will not die like they would to a full-powered Big Bang.
Here comes the full-powered Big Bang here, I believe. Yeah, but everybody's still up. We saw that Elixir being used on Usaya a bit earlier because it doesn't have much HP, but we see the crumbling down of Hello Kitty Miss, and Pkey4FE has won the race.
Yeah, that is Pkey4FE done with our race with looking into the race room. An official time of 1 hour, 27 minutes, and 23 seconds.
So yeah,
GG's to Pkey for a race well run.
Yeah, like I think a lot of the difference in this is we had that unfortunate wipe by Cubs Rule early in that Mom Bomb fight, and then the fact that Cubs didn't defeat that Galvez, because Cubs has all the other pieces in play to defeat or to finish the seed, but that's the missing piece right now.
Yeah, everything at this point is locked behind that Golbez fight, and so it is only a matter of time before Cubs Rule gets back to that Golbez and finishes off this seed. With only 2 other checks left on the moon, or 1 other check left on the moon, actually. Just that Murasame altar, and then the 2 Feymarch bosses left.
Yeah, so we'll probably see Cubs Rule just because he's already left the moon. He will probably head back down to that Feymarch and hope that the progression is behind that Golbez, but now he definitely has the higher levels and experience from the moon to be able to get through that Feymarch relatively quickly.
And it's just one of those things where it's like you're making your decisions on how you're going to tackle a seed, and you see a boss like Galvez who's annoying to fight down there at the bottom of the Feymarch. You know that it's an annoying fight, and you're like, you know what? I'm just going to do everything else that I can, and if that's what I need to do in order to do it, then then I might just lose this one. But if it hadn't, like if that wasn't it, then that would be time that Cubs Rule would have saved over Pkey. So it's like sometimes you win based on that decision and sometimes you don't. And that's kind of the nature of randomizers. And that's kind of what's fun about something like this, as we see random encounters being turned on and a hooligan fight.
Silly hooligan.
I think Cubs is having a little bit of fun with us right now.
Well, also I think knocking down 3 members of his party to set up for that Golbez fight.
Good.
Just leaving Cecil and Eddie up.
Yeah, I guess that's basically the same sort of thing that we saw Pkey do with that Kamikaze during the Dark Elf fight, but this means it looks like Cubs is going to plan on taking out that Galvez first. We see a quick save. And then this is one of those situations where you don't really need, if you can get that Star Veil off, it doesn't really matter how much health you have, so doesn't have to worry about healing up on this, just needs to go ahead and throw up that Star Veil once the Shadow Dragon has done its business, which isn't much, seeing that 3 characters are knocked out already.
Yeah, the Shadow Dragon will, if you do not come into this fight with just 2 characters up, will try to devour characters until you are down to 2, or will do it 3 times. So if you have a ribbon or an adamant armor, adamant armor is very overpowered armor that is banned from this flag set because it is too powerful. But if you have a ribbon equipped that will guard against instant death attacks, could keep an extra character alive potentially in this Golbez fight.
Yeah, in our recent, or actually current event, the Adamant Cup is named after that one really overpowered piece of equipment. We're not seeing that on this flag set, but it's definitely something that we do. Ooh, the timing off a little bit there on Cubs Rule's side, as Golbez is just too fast.
Yeah, unfortunately, with this setup, Cubs Rule will need to win a 50-50 in order to get that Star Veil off on time. We'll need Golbez to cast that first spell on Edward.
Yeah, this is the vanilla Leviathan spot. It's one of the more difficult boss spots in the entire game. It's an M-level boss, and it's very fast, very strong.
And we did see Cubs Rule actually turn down his battle speed slightly. And a lot of times you will see runners in this randomizer use that battle speed to kind of help with their agility, slow down the battle sometimes, and help get off more turns before your boss gets a turn.
Yeah, at battle speed 1, the ATB goes by so fast that you are actually losing ticks in the time that the menu takes to draw. A tool-assisted speedrun cannot possibly run the game perfectly with no lost ticks at battle speed 1. That's how fast battle speed 1 is.
So again, 1 is very fast. That's what I'm learning from this broadcast today.
Yes, 1 is very fast. We like to turn all of the numbers and make them 1.
Okay, here we go again. Star Veil has been thrown up by Cecil there on Cubs Rule side, and that's basically what's needed. Now it can throw the Bacchus for the Berserk status, and now Golbez and Cecil will both work together on Golbez's demise.
Yeah, Cecil actually doing really good work against Golbez here with that Holy Sword equipped, because Golbez is weak to Holy.
He's also weak to fire. Well, yeah, that Excalibur does a lot of work, and Golbez now complaining about his demise, and this will be the hook that Cubs Rule will need in order to finish this. Can trade in either one of the tails, or actually can complete or turn in both of them.
Yeah, just trade in both the tails and then sit through the package, although I wouldn't be surprised if Cubs considers, at least, checking the pan, because that package cutscene is quite long.
Yeah, it's long, but so is walking down Sylph again when it's not guaranteed to be there too.
This is also true. No, it is not. It could be behind the loop key, and going through the sealed cave would not be worth it.
All right, and now taking the hovercraft over to the Adamant Grotto right near the lovely seaside village of Silvera.
Trading this pink tail first. We get
summon!
It's just a Behemoth orb. The pink tail turns into a random tier 7 or tier 8 item on this flag set, so that could be an Excalibur, a Crystal Sword, an Avenger, a Dragoon Lance, a Masamune, a White Shirt, Artemis Arrows, a Moon Veil, or a Behemoth Orb.
And unfortunately, Cubs Rule got rid of his Rydia earlier in the seed. Very unfortunately. So says me.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you're sad about that one, J-Mac.
I mean, Rydia with Behemoth is very powerful, but with pretty much just the Zeromus fight left, might not feel like Rydia would be even that viable even for Zeromus, because Rydia takes more experience than Palom to get Nuke, which is the big ending Black Mage spell. And also, Zeromus has extra nasty counters for summons.
And here comes that package cutscene, seeing the duplicate Cecil there for Cubs Rule. Imagine it'll probably be a similar time as Pkey did, where we don't want to go through the full thing. Getting that other Cecil here, not really in the cards.
No, but it is worth pointing out that you know how we like to randomize everything. We also randomize the sprite that burns down the Village Mist. So today we saw Antlion burning down Village Mist because apparently Antlion decided to come out of his cave and light a fire.
Yeah, a lot of little randomized Easter eggs in this game with that, the palette, the Job Dwarf, the Twin Harp, the Z Sprite, even the statues that stop the walls from crushing you in Baron are all randomized now.
We gotta fit all the random Easter eggs into this game.
And now the Village Mist has been burned down on Cubs Rule screen. We have different objective 1 completed by Pkey, objective 2 completed by Cubs. So a little different routing to get there, but now sure can be, Cubs Rule is going to fly over to Toria, and we are going to have yet another bout with Hello Kitty moves.
Yeah, and honestly, considering how many extra checks Cubs Rule made with those 3 extra moon bosses, this is not a bad time.
No.
Yeah.
Did I just see Cubs Rule just swag walk in here?
That may have been. You think that there was not a save made?
I don't think there was a save.
That is showing confidence, because Zeromus is no joke.
Yeah, we have Cecil, who's very strong. I did see that Porum knows Cure 4. But the Zeromus fight can still be very scary, especially for that poor little Spoonword, who doesn't have that many hit points.
But we will get to see the magic that is the spoon equipped on Edward while he stands up, at least.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, very different party compositions for our 2 runners as well. So it's really interesting, I think, when you've got a flag set like this with the free characters where you're really able to pick and choose who you want, how comfortable different runners feel with different parties as well. And so that's a real fun aspect of this randomizer, I think. Here comes the toss of the crystal, and Zeromus is about to be transformed into Hellemus again. His true colors emerged.
Yes, and while we did see Pkey4FE really go for those berserker strats on the C fight by just having 3 melee characters berserked, I think we're going to see a little bit of alternative Z strats over here. Having, not only do we have the Spoonword and the Excal Cecil, but we also have the twins. So I feel like we're going to have a little bit of a mix and match between berserking and as well as some reflect strats.
Yeah, Palom has already put up that Star Veil. Porum casting a reflected slow onto Hello Kitty Mess to get a slow without a counter, because if you reflect spells on Zeromus, it does not trigger counterattacks, and that is unfortunate.
Oof. Spoonword goes down.
Yeah, so we might not see the full power of Eddie with the spoon in this fight. So
we got to see him hit a couple times. He was doing like 3,600 damage, which is not quite as much as Cecil, but it's close. But also looks like Cubs Rule is planning on getting that Spoonward back up.
Yeah, so sometimes in the community when we see this combination of both physical attacks and reflected spells onto the final boss here, we kind of refer to it as a hybrid strat. If you've got all mages at the end, you can just do like pure reflecting, or as we saw in PK, you can do kind of a pure berserk strategy. But this one takes some of each of it in order to use your characters to their best abilities to have both angles of attack to wear down the HP as quick as possible.
Yeah, Palom here isn't much good at berserking, but we may as well, since he's stuck in the party, we may as well use him to cast whatever spells he can to add on to Cecil and Edward's damage output.
Yeah, Cubs did not level up Palom enough so that he has the almighty nuke spell, so using level 3 elemental magic, it can still do a decent chunk of damage. It's just not as efficient as some other spells might be, but 4,500 damage right there is pretty good.
Yeah, it's definitely not nothing.
I mean, Cecil can do that much damage quite a bit faster with the berserking, but yeah.
Yeah, and Edward is definitely not slouching either, putting out almost 4,000 on that swing.
As we see Hellemus shake again, and that indicates a big bang coming up. We'll see if we see it, depending on how fast Cubs Rule is able to get down the HP.
Yeah, it looks like Cubs Rule is going for a nerf with this Fusoya. That should be timed correctly, triggering this counter nuke here, which hits Cecil for quite a lot of damage.
But also has the elixir to heal him up right away as well.
And out comes this big bang, which I believe should be nerfed, doing about half the damage that it would if it was not nerfed.
Yeah, well timed there by Cubs.
Yeah, very good for this team.
Yeah, that nerfing of big bangs is not easy.
And out come the rocks, and oof.
It's a little rough, but now we've got a full HP Cecil who's still berserk, so it should be just a matter of time here.
Yeah, once Meteo starts falling, Meteo is all that Hello Kitty Mist will do until the fight is over, and that's
there
time.
It is!
GG's to Cubs. We're getting through the seed in an hour and 44 minutes and 17 seconds, even with fading that one very, very required Golbez spot for a while. Still making great time.
Yeah, well played by both of our runners today, Pkey4787 and Cubs Rule 21. GG's to both of you, and thanks for putting on a great show for us.
Yes, definitely. Both of these runners really showcased different strategies that go into this randomizer, different party comps, different pathing and routing. So this was a very, very good race to watch tonight.
Yeah, and if the value had been in different places, we could have very easily seen the race swing in a different way, potentially. Even with Cubs Rule's early wiped and losing a lot of progress from that early save, forgetting to save.
And so now I'd like to thank all of you for joining us for this submission race tonight. I want to thank our restreamer Harumph for allowing this to be shown, and our tracker LM Motas for hitting all the buttons to make everything followable. I'd also like to thank my co-commentators Xenocat and JMac the Librarian.
And a big thanks to Rex Raoul for also joining us up in the comms booth. And I just want to give a shout out to our community. If you watch this race and really like the Final Fantasy IV game and want to get into the randomizer, I really would shout out this community. It is a great community to be involved in. Very nice, very helpful. There is a a lot for new players to do and a lot of support that you can get just by joining in.
And Xenocat, do you have any final thoughts before we?
Just that I could say in the 2 years that I've been a part of this community, this has been honestly just such an amazing community. Shout outs to just the entire community. Shout outs again to everyone on this team. Shout outs to Asuka for organizing this submission and Zoe Vermillion for organizing this submission video. And shout outs to Scala for the Z Sprite.
Yes, very cute indeed. And thanks again for everybody for joining us. And I hope you all have a good night now.
Good night.
Good night.